So inheritance means reusability. That is, if a method is already defined in one class and another class requires the same method, then instead of redefining it again, what we can do, we can borrow it or inherit it from class 1. So for that, we have to make the relationship in between the two classes, the relationship of parent child, or you can say relationship of superclass and subclass. To relate the two classes, we use one keyword, which is extends keyword, by which we can inherit one class into another class and can use the methods and the variables of one class into two class into the second class. But it is subject to some accessibility modifiers like public, protected, default, and private. These are the access modifiers which we can use with our variable declaration and method declaration. Public has the biggest scope, that is, any class can access or inherit the public members of the class. But if we want to restrict it, then we can make it protected or default or private. So private is the least accessible thing. So we'll discuss that particular thing, and for that we'll be making one example. So I'll make one class today. So our program was evening Java, and I will make a new class. So I will make a class by the name of parent. You can use any name, but only for the understanding, I'm using the name as parent. Main method. Here we are defining some global variables in a class, and with the global variables, I am using the access modifiers like public is string type of the variable I am defining. Say public variable, and I will define it is equal to public variable. Another modifier I am using is protected. Protected variable. When I do not use any access modifier, then Java takes default modifier. If I do not use anything, then Java takes default modifier, and default modifier scope is less than protected, or we can define it as a private. Similarly, I am defining the user defined methods, and again I am using the access modifier public void, say public method. Again, one more method I will define, and here I will use the modifier as instead of public we can use protected. Similarly, I can define the method And if I do not define any, neither public method nor protected method, then it will take it as a default method. Hmm, what is that? Okay, then it will take it as a default method, default modifier. So if we are defining a method, but we are not using any access modifier, but return type is must. You cannot define the method without a return type. But if we are not defining the access modifier, it will take it as a default modifier. And similarly, I can make private. Okay. So in a class, we have defined some global variables and we have defined methods with four different modifiers. Now in the same class, everything is accessible within the same class. So if I make a constructor of the parent class, if I make a constructor of this parent class, and from here if I call the public method or protected method or default method or private method, everything is accessible within the same method. Similarly, the global variables are non-static variables. We have not used static with it. So it means these are the instance members. And if I want to call the instance members of the class, then again I have to use the class reference variable to call the variables. So I will use p dot say public variable or protected variable or default variable, or private also we can call. So everything is accessible within the same class. All the methods and variables are executed in the same. If I make a static variable, public static string, say static variable is equals to static variable, and we can use static modifier, and with that static modifier again I can use public or I can use private also. I can make the static variable as private also. I can make the static variable as protected also, or if I do not use anything, it will take it as a default. So static is a concept which we have understood in our last classes, and with static I can use the access modifiers. So let me use this protected only. And similarly, if you want to make a method as a static, then you can make a static method also. Public static void static method. Static method. And again with the static method, you can use the modifier public or you can use the modifier private. Let us use private, or you can use protected or default. When we use the static, so I told you that static we can call without constructor. The static can be called directly without creating the class constructor. Say private, just a second, we have to change the method name. No, this was, it was static method, this one, not private, it is static method. So static can be called directly without creating the class constructor. And similarly, we can call static variable without class reference. But here you cannot use, which we have discussed, that instance members are always called by the class reference after initializing of the class. So it means static members can also have a access modifier protected or private, and within the same class we can call them static method and static variable. There is one more modifier which is called final. Final means which cannot be changed. So we can use this final modifier with the class name. So I can make the class as a final. So this parent class is a final class. That means now all we cannot make any changes to this final class. And if a class is a final class, then we cannot inherit it. Let me make one more class, say another class by the name of child. You can give any name, only for the understanding I am giving the name as child. So this is a separate class and this is a separate class, two independent classes. They are not related to each other. So if I want to make the relationship of parent and child, then if I use this extends is a keyword in Java, and if I use extends parent, it will give me the error. Remove the final modifier. So it means if the class is a final class, it cannot be inherited. Like if I inherit string, say string is also a class. If I inherit a string, then also it is giving me the error. You cannot, string is a final class, you see. So all the predefined classes are final. It means they cannot be inherited. So now again, if I remove this final from here, so now I'm making this class as non-final. Now this error, if I extends parent, so now this error is removed. Now this child can inherit the parent, which is not final. So if I come again with the definition of inheritance, inheritance means which you can also modify. If you are inheriting the value using it, but you are not making the changes to it, then you can not say that it is inheritance. Like take an example, if you visit a hotel for 3 days and you're using the property of the hotel over there, geyser, AC, room, furniture, then you cannot say that this hotel belonged to me, this furniture belonged to me. You're using it, but you cannot say this is my property. But again, when you visit your parents' house for 3 days in the vacation, and again you are using the parents' furniture, parents and a house, parent and a TV, refrigerator, AC, etc. Then you say that this is my property, this is my AC, this is my TV, this is my refrigerator. But actually you have not purchased those things. It is purchased by your father. It is your father home, he has purchased it. All the items inside your home is purchased by your father, it belongs to him. But you also say with authority that these are my items without purchasing them. Then also you say these are my items because you have a relationship with your father. But if you have a relationship with your father, but it is not that good relationship between you and your father, and your father does not authorize you to make any changes to your home, that is, you cannot change the curtains, you cannot change the furniture, or you cannot change the wall color, or you cannot start the AC on your own, you have to take his permission only to start the AC. Then what you will say? You say, this is not my home, this is my father's home, I am just living over here, I cannot use anything, I cannot do the changes. So this does not belong to me. I do not have any right to change. So same thing is happening over here. Inheritance means two things. One is reusability, and second thing is right to change. If I'm not able to change the thing, Java does not permit me to inherit. So final means complete, which cannot be changed. So if I'm making a class final, then I cannot inherit it. Similarly, I can use the final modifier with the variables. Say here, this variable, public variable, I am assigning the value public variable. And if I want to change it, so I can change over here. Public variable is equals to say xxx. So it means public variable value was public var, but when I'm calling this method, it is changing the value of public variable to xxx. So now public variable value is changed. But if I make it final here, if I make it final, then it will give me the error. The final field cannot be assigned. So it means now this value is final. You cannot change this value. So this is final. So we can use final with a variable name, and the now class is not final, but it's one of the member is final. Similarly, I can make one final variable, final method also. Like static, we can use final with a method name also. Public final void, say final method, like this. So again, when we are making the method as a final, then it means its body is not changeable. You cannot change the body. So here, if this method or this method I'm saying is not final, then I can change this body. But here in final, we cannot change the body of the method. This we will show you when I will do the overloading and overriding concept. The final value, uh, f- uh, if I'm using it with a variable name, final value cannot be changed. If I'm using final with a class, then I cannot inherit the class, even if the methods are public or anything. If the class is final, you cannot inherit it. Similarly, if a method is a final method, then I cannot change the body. But final method can be inherited. Final variable can be inherited. So now again coming back to the same. Now coming back to this class child, I am removing extends. I will add it later. So this is another class, that is a child class. And in child class, I am making one method, say public void child msg. Say child says hello. So now this is a method belonging to this class child. So this is the object of class child. So again, if I create the class child constructor and write c dot child message, so it is calling this child method. But if I try to call c dot public method, so it will say this public method is not available in this class child. It is not available. It will give you the error. It will not call the parent class method, public method. It will not call this method because this method, it is not able to locate in this class because these and these two classes are not related to each other. Then what to do? Again, if I create parent class constructor here, now this concept we have also discussed in our previous class, that is you can create the constructor of one class from another class. So here in main method of child, if I create the constructor of parent and then again if I call public method, protected method, default method and private method, similarly variables using this reference p, then you see public is accessible, protected is accessible, default accessible, but private is not accessible. Private is accessible within the same class only. And similarly in the variables, public, protected and default is accessible, private is not accessible over it. But we are accessing these members by the reference of parent and not by the reference of child. So this is not inheritance, but we can do it, but it is not inheritance, because inheritance means that child is using the members of the parent class. Here parent is calling its own method, so you cannot say that this method belongs to the child, but we can call it. So if I run this child, so child method is also called by using the child reference, and other methods are also called by using the parent reference. Here again, if we use static declaration, static, if I use static, then this static is not available because this particular static method again is a private declaration. Here we have defined it as a private. So if I make it public or protected or default, then it will be accessible. So again, static method can be accessed by class name like this, parent dot static class name, and static variable can be accessed by the class name. So but we are accessing all the members of the class by from the parent, not by the child. So we are saying that we can do it, but it is not inheritance actually. So all the methods are called static is also called, but not in a inheritance way. So now how to call it in an inheritance way? So I will comment it. and now I will write extends parent. And now these two classes are linked to each other. And now when I call C dot, so you see I will get public method, protected method. So it means now C is accessing its own method as well as it is accessing the methods of the parent also. So it means now we are doing inheritance and we are calling the parent class method from the reference of the child. If you look at it, public is accessible of the parent, protected is accessible of the parent, default is accessible of the parent, but private is not accessible. And if I try to call final method, so final method is accessible. So I can inherit final method, but cannot change it. I can inherit final method. Similarly, static, static methods. Static can be called. Static methods are also inherited, and we can call the static method and variable without the constructor also, parent. So these are the static methods of the method and variable of the parent class. So static is also inherited, final method is also inherited, and variables also we can inherit. So not only methods are inherited, when we extend the class, all class members are inherited, variables as well as methods. But main method is not inherited. This one, when we discussed in our first class, so I told you not to write any program or any logic inside the main method, because main method is not a part of a class. It does not belong to the class. You can give your laptop to me when it is your property, but if it is the office property, that is your laptop is an office laptop, you cannot give it to me. So similarly, main method is inside this. If I write anything inside the main method, it cannot be reused. It is not an object oriented approach. I cannot overload main method or override the main method. So hence we should not write any code inside the main method, because that will not be inherited. Main method we cannot inherit. Only our own methods and variables can be inherited. So like here, we are inheriting the methods as well as the variable. So again, if I inherit the variable, so we can refer by using child reference like this. Private is not accessible. Private is not accessible. Okay. Rest are accessible. Now we have also defined this final. So final means its value cannot be changed. So we can inherit it, public variable, but we cannot change it. Like if I want to change this protected variable, I can change it. C dot protected variable is equals to y. No problem. So child can change the value of this protected variable. This protected variable. But if I write public variable, here it is giving the error, because here I have created this public variable as final. So final can be inherited here, but its value is not changeable in the child. Child cannot change the value. Similarly, final method can be inherited here. We have inherited the final method, but we cannot change the body of the final method. That is, we cannot override the final method. That also we'll discuss in just after 5-10 minutes. What is the concept of overriding or overloading? So now I think it is understandable. That is, when we are inheriting the class, so we can inherit the static members, we can inherit the public, protected, and default members, and static members only when it is not private. And we can also inherit the variables, even if the variable is a final variable or a final method that can be inherited. Now, one more thing. So if you run it again, then you can check it. All the static and all the methods and variables are being accessed. Okay. Now, one more thing. Java does not support multiple inheritance. Okay. Like if I want to inherit multiple classes, I cannot inherit the multiple classes. For example, for example, I'll make one more class, say grandchild. Now this is a grandchild which want to access the members of parent and child both. If I use extends parent comma child, it is an error. Single class cannot have two parents. If I try to use extends two times, then also it is an error. We cannot use extends two times. Now, but what we can do, we can write extends child only. Now child is extending parent and grandchild is extending child. So it means grandchild will have a relationship with parent also, because parent and child are related and grandchild is related to this child. So it will become the grandchild of this parent class also. And now if I write one method for the grandchild and create the constructor of this grandchild, and call the grandchild method, plus it can call the child class method, child msg, plus it can call the parent method. So from here, it can access its own method, it can access the child class method, as well as it can access the parent class method. In that way, we can link the classes together. We can make a chain and then we can do the multiple inheritance in that way. All the methods are being executed. Now, here we have created parent class, child class, and grandchild class in a same package. All are in the same com package. All are in the same package, com package. But it may happen that when you're working in a project, one person is making one application, another person is making another application, So he's making another package, you are making another package, and then you want to use the methods of the class coming from another package. So if I make another package like com, I go to the src, right click, new package. Package already told you groups together the classes. Package. Say I make a package by the name of org. So this is a new package. And in this org package, again, if I create a new class by the name of, say, another class, say child 2. So now this is again a class which want to extend this parent class here. Okay, parent class, this one. But this parent class is available in com package, and this child is available in org package. This is another package, org. So if I try to extend parent, so it will give me the error that is parent is not available in org. So we have to import it. So if we are extending a class which is coming outside the package, then we have to import it, like we are importing the scanner class or in a some in a other in a predefined library we are importing. So similarly we can import our own package also. So when I take my mouse over to the parent, it will give me the option to import the parent. Now import will be the second line and first is a package line. Package is the first, it is a reserved word keyword of the Java. So whenever we are creating a class, it should be inside the package extends pin. Now here again, if I create the child2 constructor, it's not compulsory to give C name, you can give any name, say OB. Now this OB can refer to this parent methods. So again, if I try to call OB dot public method which is accessible, OB dot protected method, again it is accessible. But again, if I try to call OB dot default method, it is not accessible. Default method. Like here, the scope of private was not available. Public was accessible, protected was accessible, default was accessible, but private scope was not there. Similarly, when I'm creating a child class in another package and parent is in another package, then child cannot access the default methods of the parent class. They are not accessible. And public protected are only accessible. If I try to call private, so private are also not available over here. The scope of default is less than protected. And similarly, if I say I want to access the static variable which is protected, I can access it. So you can access the static. So like we are in the same class, we were inheriting the static members. So you can inherit static, no problem in that. But if I make this static over here, if I make this static as a default means I'm not writing any access modifier. And again, I save it. Now it will give me the error because the scope of default is not available over here. So it means static or non-static. What is important is the access modifier. Now it is accessible. Now it is accessible. Okay. So if the class child is in another package and parent is another package, then you cannot access the default and private members of that class. Again, if I run it, so you can see static members and public and protected members are accessible. One more thing, again, I go to this org package and I will create one more class, say ABC. So again, I have created this ABC class, and this particular ABC class is in org package, and I do not want to extend parent. Like here, what we had done, I told you that we can call the parent members by using the parent constructor. Like we have done scanner sc is equal to new scanner. So I was not extending a scanner class. So similarly, if this ABC want to use the parent members, then it can create the constructor of the parent class and then call the methods. So let us try to use this one also. So here, if I'm creating the parent class constructor, so it will ask me to import the parent. So now I'm not extending parent. So what I'm doing, I'm importing parent and creating the parent class constructor in this ABC class. But here, if you see, the scope of protected is also not available. When I was creating this parent class constructor in this child within the same package, then it was able to access the default. Only private was not accessible. But here, if you see, I cannot access private, I cannot access default, and I also cannot access the protected. Only public methods are accessible over here. So if you are creating the constructor of the class in a, another class which is in another package, then only public methods and variables are accessible. Only public. Only public. So that are the access modifiers basically. What is the scope of public, what is the scope of private, protected, and default. And we can inherit static members and final members of the class. But final class cannot be inherited. Now, one more concept when we talk about the inheritance. So there is one more concept of polymorphism. Polymorphism means same method works differently with different input. That is, we can overload or override the method. So this is called polymorphism in Java. So let us try to do overloading first. Method overloading. So method overloading can be done without inheritance also. Like I am saying method overload in same class. I am not doing any inheritance. That is, I am doing the overloading within the same class. And it is called compile time polymorphism. Compile time polymorphism. How to do it? For that, when we define a method, say public void parent msg. So this is the method we have defined parent msg, and if I'll give the message and again if I redefine this method, again if I define this method, but I change the method access modifier from public to say protected. I change the return type from void to string, but I does not change the name of the method and I does not change the input and I change the body also. It will give me the error duplicate. This method we have defined, and again we this method we have defined, but while defining I have changed the return type, I have changed the access modifier, I have changed the body, but it is not treating it as a new method. It is treating it as a duplicate method. But if I change the input type, like here it is not taking any input, but if I change the input type from empty to string, then this error of duplicate is removed. So if a method name is same, but its input is different, like here we are not taking any input, here we are taking string and as an input, then it will be treated as a new method. Every method will be treated as a new define, even if the return type is same or different. Return type or access modifier is not considered, or static non-static is not considered. Left hand side, what the Java consider is the method name and the argument. Even if you are making it void, even you make it public, it will not give the duplicate error. So every method will be treated as a new method. Again, for example, I make same method again and say again I change the access modifier or I change it to the static. So you see this method is non-static method, this method is a static method, or I change from x to y variable name, it will give me the duplicate error message only. So it means left hand side is not considered. Even if you change the left hand side, we change the return type from int and write return, it will be treated as a duplicate only. So it these things public or static or int, if you're changing it but you're not changing the method name and you're not changing the input, it will be treated as a duplicate method only. But again, if I change the data type, say here I was writing no input, here I was taking string input, but here if I change the input to int, so it will be treated as a new define. So it means method name is same, but if arguments are changing, that is number of the arguments or data type of the argument is changing, then it will be treated as a new method, new define. Even if the return type is same or different, it is not matter. You can make it, you can change it, then it is also new define. And even if you're not changing it, say void only, you do not want to make it static, then also it will not give you any error because it will be treated as a new method. So this is called method overloading. Method name same, but arguments different. This is a method overloading in the same class, And how do we call the method? By the argument. p dot say parent msg. If I pass the int, it will search for the method with int input and call that method. If I pass the method without any input, it will search the method without input. And again, if I pass the string, it will search, the method will be called as per the input. Parent. So all the methods, age, hello, name, same method, but it is overloaded in the same class. So every method is treated as a new method and is called as per the input. Now again, if I do the overloading in the child, now this is called overload in child. This is called runtime polymorphism. That is, overloading of the method is done after inheritance. So what is this runtime polymorphism? That is overloading in child. That is, again, if I define the same method here, so these methods are already available. And again, if I define the same method again over here, but I change the parameter, that is, now I have changed the parameters to 2. So again, it will be treated as a new define. This is not considered. If you want to change the return type, you can change it. If you want to change the access model, you change it. Otherwise, if you do not want to change it, no problem. Only the parameters must be changed. So again, if I say write parent name and age, so it will be a new define. If I overload method, now if I write c dot parent msg, so this is the parent msg coming from parent. This is the parent msg coming from parent, and this is a parent msg coming from child. So all are having the different inputs: no input, int input, string input, string. So all the methods are new methods. So again, if I say I call this a string, and again if I call this method, so all these, this and this method will be executed, one from the parent, another from the child. Both has the same name, but parameters are different. That is called overloading of the method in child after inheritance. Now, one more concept is called, now you see, both the methods are called. One more concept is called overriding of the method. Now, overriding will always be done after inheritance. What is overriding? Overriding concept is that child is changing or modifying the body of the parent method. When we talk about overloading, so we say it is a new method, it is a new define. But when we talk about the overriding, we say method name, argument parameter list, return type, access modifier, everything remains same. Only the body changes. We cannot do overriding in the same class as we have done. If I define the same method with the same parameter, it will give me the duplicate error. So it means in the same class, we cannot define the two methods with the same parameter name. It will give the duplicate error. But in the child, if I want to change the body, parent says hello. Right now, what it is saying, if from the child, if I say call this method c dot parent msg, so this parent msg method is not defined. This parent msg method is not available over here. So it will call it from parent only. And what will be the output? The output is parent says hello. But if again I redefine this particular method in child, that is called override, which is always done after inheritance. So it means again I am defining, it is not a new define, it is old define only, old method, old parent method, and I am modifying the body. That is, instead of saying parent says hello, I am changing the body to child says hello. So it means body is changing. Okay. So it means method name is same, parameter is same, return type is same, access modifier is same. It means it is an old parent method and child is changing the body of that particular method. That is called override. If in this case I change the return type to int, it is not permitted because it is not a new define. It will give the error because now it is neither overloading neither overriding. Overloading means method arguments must change, which I am not changing. And overriding means you only change the body. You cannot change the signature of the method, return type and access modifier you cannot change, which I am changing. So it is incompatible. So when we are doing overriding, we cannot change the return type. We cannot change the access modifier also. It will give the error. We can only change the body. Okay. So again, when I override it, so now again when child will call parent MSG, so it will find this parent MSG in its own class here, and now it will execute this body and not parent body. So it means now this method is overridden. Override. So again, if I execute it, so it will not print hello from parent, it will print hello from child. Child says hello. That means it has overridden the body of the parent. But final method, I told you, final method we cannot override. We cannot change the body of the final method. Now this method is not final. If I make it final, then it will give you the error. If I make this method as a final method, public final void parent msg, so it means now I cannot change it, and now it will give me the error here. So now it is saying that cannot override the final method. So it means if I make this method as a final, then I cannot override it. or I have made one this method public void final method. If I want to change the body, I can inherit the final method. No problem in that. Yes, we have inherited it. Can be inherited. Final method can be inherited. No problem. But if I want to change the body, I am final method of child, then it is not permitted. Even if you remove the final, because it is final in parent, it will give you the error. So final method cannot be overridden. Okay. So that is all we have to understand. That is meaning of access modifiers, meaning of extents, and we can create the constructor, and then also we can call the methods, but that is not inheritance. And what is the meaning of final, static, and what is the meaning of overloading and overriding. So hopefully you have understood the session.